Whether you're looking at buying a Mazda 3 or you even just bought one yourself, this is the ultimate Mazda 3 buyer's guide, so you know exactly what you're looking for. What is going on, everybody? Today I have the ultimate Mazda 3 buyer's guide, so you know everything that could go wrong with this car, common issues and everything else, so you're protected in case anything goes wrong. I've been in the Mazda 3 community for over 8 years. This is actually my first car, and this is 8 years old with me. This baby has over 260,000 kilometers. I've also owned 2 other Mazda 3 sedans, just like this one, that have both been over 250,000 kilometers. So I assure you, you guys are gonna get some of the best information that I know. And if you have a lot of history with the Mazda 3 yourself, please share your common knowledge down in the comments below, just in case I missed anything important. With that being said, let's go ahead and find out everything that you need to know about the Mazda 3. There is no doubt the motor and the transmission are going to be some of the most important things to look at with these cars, so let's go ahead and start with that first. The first generation Mazda 3 came in 2 different motor sizes, the 2-liter and the 2.3. This car itself is the 2-liter, and all the other Mazda 3s I've owned have been 2 liters for a specific reason. The 2-liter has been known to be quite bulletproof, while the 2.3 has some common issues, and that's something that I've personally stayed away from when buying the Mazda 3. The 2.3 at higher kilometers, although this can also happen at lower kilometers too, tends to burn a lot of oil due to a bad PCV system. That, yes, can be replaced, but it has also been known not to fix the issue as a whole. It goes a lot further than just replacing the PCV valve. You have to replace the whole PCV system. And when I say burning a lot of oil, not just a little bit, it will burn oil to the point where you have to put a lot of oil back into it before even your next oil change. Now, when you're running out of oil, things that are very common to cause blown motors in these cars are thrown rod, bad rod bearings, just because you're not having enough oil and you don't think to check it. So what's the differences between the 2-liter and the 2.3, and why might you want the 2.3? I don't know, to be honest. The 2.3 makes 10 more horsepower and about 10 more foot-pounds of torque. While that little bit of power increase is kind of nice, when you're looking at buying an older car like this, especially if you're on a little bit of a budget, I'd highly recommend just getting the 2-liter. It's fuel friendly. This thing has been incredibly bulletproof for me, and I just would never think to go out and get a 2.3 in the first generation Mazda 3. That's just my personal opinion. I'm not saying every 2.3 is bad. There's a lot of good 2.3s out there. It just seems more common that the 2.3 will have oil burning issues of some sort. The transmission. Now, there are a couple common things with the transmissions on both the automatics and the manuals. Now, I've only ever owned the manuals, but I can tell you for the automatics as well. Over time, the automatic transmission has a thing called the transmission control module, which basically just controls how it shifts and everything like that for the automatic transmission only. This little module is placed under the battery box, kind of far in the back, but over time, as the car gets older, it tends to get hot and it malfunctions. Then it pretty much leaves you dog-legged on the side of the road with a bad shifting transmission. While this is really easy to replace, and there's lots of forum write-ups on relocating it, getting a new one, relocating it, and doing it yourself, it's not a hard fix. It's something I wouldn't stray away from at all. It's just something to know about in case your transmission starts acting funky. If you went and bought this car, that's probably one of the first things I recommend doing, is just relocating it. Now, with the manual transmissions, this is something that's a bit more common, the synchros in the gear. This specific car has 260,000 kilometers on it, and about 50,000 kilometers ago, the first to second shifts is just not having it anymore, and I'm having a little bit of a grinding issue, like I said, once in a while. My beater Mazda 3 is a 2005. Pretty much the same car as this. It would have the same transmission. The second to third, the third gear synchro is pretty much cooked. If I shift it second to third from, you know, a normal shifting pace, it will grind. However, I haven't lost that gear. So when you're test driving the cars, just shift the gears, make sure they're all good to go. If there's no problems with them, then I doubt the transmission has any issues. This just seems to be a thing that I've run into with the older K cars, but this is just something to look out for. Now, if we look at some other things in the engine bay that could go wrong, this little baby right here, this is called your third motor mount or your passenger motor mount. This is filled with hydraulic fluid, and it tends to blow up around 90,000 to 120,000 kilometers. So that might be blown. Just double check that. It doesn't hurt. Another very common thing is for the upper bank O2 sensor to go out around 100 to 160,000 kilometers. All 3 of my Mazda 3 sedans have had O2 sensors that have needed to be replaced within that kilometer range. With that being said, that is everything that is super incredibly common and things you should probably look out for when looking at your Mazda 3. Other than that, everything else that kind of goes wrong seems to be regular wear and tear and just, you know, things that you might expect. Now let's move on to the rest of the car. Now, if there were 2 things about the Mazda 3 that that would be probably the biggest things that I look at, you know, when buying one would be the engine bay and the suspension. Honestly, I don't know if it's just owner's neglect or if it was just, you know, poor quality of parts on Mazda's end, but there's quite a few suspension things you guys need to look at when you're buying a Mazda 3. Your struts and shocks are gonna last around 90 to 120,000 kilometers before you'll notice they'll be blown. So ask for, you know, maintenance records or whatnot. Front and rear end links seem to be something that people don't replace. Incredibly cheap part, very easy to replace, but again, those are probably gonna be shot. Those are your sway bar stabilizer end link. Front control arms are gonna last around 120,000 kilometers. That seems to be kind of like the mark on these cars. People will get told about cracked bushings and kind of leave them until they start clunking, and that's when they'll sell the cars. So just listen for clunking. These are gonna be your sign tails or the end links, and your control arms are gonna clunk. If your struts are bouncy, and it's clunking, it's probably gonna be your struts, but you guys kind of get the idea. Now, one of the best ways to negotiate a Mazda 3 is in the rear suspension. There's a thing called the rear trailing arm bushing. Essentially, think of something that connects to the wheel to approximately right here. There's bushings that sit in this area, but like undercar, so like inside there. This goes around 150,000 kilometers. This car had them replaced. One of the other Mazda 3s I had them replaced, and my beater needs them done. I haven't done them. They don't get done because they're so expensive, and you don't really notice them because they don't make sounds unless they're like completely like gone, but these literally will tear themselves out. I almost promise you, if you're buying a high kilometer car, they haven't been done in the maintenance records. I mean, you can get under there, look for yourself. It's such an expensive job at the shop to do. This is a good negotiating factor if someone hasn't done it, because these do need to be done sooner or later. Rear trailing arm bushings have been slept on. Make sure you do them. Make sure they get done, and make sure you take a look at them. And one more thing for the back of the car while we're here, your rear shock mount, your upper mount that sits up there from the shock, which is behind the wheel, will get rusty, corrode, and it will crack and blow. It might blow up. I've seen a lot of them blow up. And when they blow up, car's gonna be a little squiggly. It needs to get replaced. You can't have that happen. Just take a look at those. Make sure they're not cracked at all, and replace them if you need to. Again, you can get these really cheap. 10 to 20 bucks. What about a couple things about the exterior of the car now that we've gone over suspension? These cars are incredibly known, well, to rust. While rust might not be noticeable on the front end of the car or just underneath in general, these rear fenders, starting from here is the worst point. These can eat themselves apart from behind the side skirt. You will notice bubbling along here. So take a look at these fenders. See if they've been redone or not. If they've been redone, you need some sort of confirmation that all this rust has been cut out. Like I said, the rust will start here and work its way around the rear fenders. Rust is also common to start up in this part of the fender where it meets the front bumper, and on the hatchbacks, etc., where the badge sits on the rear of the trunk. On top, where the wing sits, are a couple other spots. Very notorious in salty areas that you might get rust on your Mazda 3. Your trunk will be prone to leaking. I have a very good explanational video if you guys do have a trunk leak to check that out. Leaks can come from the trunk seal, they can come from the taillight seal. So basically, one telltale if you buy this car in the sun or whatnot is to basically pull everything out, look in the spare wheel well, and there should be pretty much a leak. You can also check the metal of the trunk that goes down to the spare wheel well to see if there's been any, you know, leakage or anything going down there. It's a telltale sign that you have a trunk leak in the Mazda 3. As for the interior of the Mazda 3 goes, everything in here is actually quite well built. The only big issue you guys might kind of run into, and it's not even a big issue, is these window switches on the driver's side know to malfunction. Again, these are really easy to replace, and you can get them for quite cheap, or you just go to the record yard and find a working pair. It's mostly common that the driver's side just kind of stops working. But other than that, seriously, I can't think of anything else in the car that is kind of common to go wrong with these. Just kind of check and see what looks right and wrong to you. And with that being said, guys, that's literally everything that you need to know about the Mazda 3 before you go buy one, or if you have one. Like I said, other people will share their thoughts down in the comments below of any common things that they might have run into. That is everything that I know that I wanted to share with you before you go buy a Mazda 3, and things that you should be looking at in case they go wrong. If you like today's video, make sure to hit the subscribe button, leave a like with the video, comment down below. Other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it always. Keep it real. I'll see y'all in the next one.